Hashem. Today's daf yomi is Avodah Zarah daf Ayin Gimel Avodah Zarah 73. And today's daf is dedicated for Shemir for the Chayalim, Atal for the Shviyim, and Yeshua for Am Yisrael. Daf, we're going to start at the Mishnah on the second line. The daf yomi says Yayin Nesach Asar v'Oser v'Kolsho. Yayin Nesach is prohibited, and it makes its prohibition in any amount. So Yayin Nesach is Asar v'Oser v'Kolsho. It prohibits even any amount. So it says the Mishnah, Yayin b'yayin, umayim b'mayim, if it's wine in wine, or if it's water in water, meaning to say that if Rashi explains if there was water that was poured for Avodah Zarah and it fell into permitted water, so it's any amount. Yayin v'mayim, umayim b'yayin, but let's say it's two different substances, it's wine and water and wine, benosin tam, and it's only prohibited if it gives off taste. And zakwal, this is the general rule. Min b'mino b'mashahu. So this is the general rule. Min b'mino b'mashahu, v'shalo b'mino benosin tam. So this is the general rule. If it is min b'mino, if it's two similar substances, that's in any amount. But if it's not in the same type of substance, it's benosin tam. It is if it gives off taste. Kehasa Rav Dimi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So when Rav Dimi came in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, he said, Hama'ara yayin nesech michaves labor afil kol hayom kul. Let's say you're pouring yayin, wine, that's prohibited from the barrel into a pit, even the whole day. So the pit has more than the wine. So rishon batal. Each time a little bit drops in, it's going to be nullified. And so therefore, all day long, it'll be nullified. So the Gemara is going to challenge Rav Dimi from our Mishnah tonight. It's prohibited even in any amount, not only if it gives off taste, it makes everything prohibited. My lab, the konafel isura go at terror. Are we talking about a case where the prohibited item fell into the permitted, and we say it's prohibited in any amount? The Gemara says, "Lo, the konafel hatero go isura." No, that's talking about a case where the permitted amount fell into the prohibited wine. And so therefore, each drop becomes prohibited by the majority. Meaning to say, even if the permitted wine was so much greater than the prohibited wine, we're still going to say it's prohibited because each drop is nullified. Gemara says, another attempt to challenge Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi says, Rishon, kama bato. Yayin b'mayim, if wine goes into water, benosin tam, it's going to be prohibited if it gives off flavor. My love, the konafel chama d'isuro amayad. Are we talking about a case where the wine that was prohibited fell into the water that was permitted? And nevertheless, we say that it is giving off taste, and we don't say that it becomes nullified. Gemara says, no, the konafel chama d'atero amayad isur. No, we're talking about a case where the wine which was permitted fell into the water that was prohibited. So Gemara says, wait 1 second. Umidereisha b'mayad isura, seifa nami b'mayad isura. So the Gemara is saying, first case deals with prohibited water. Then if that's the case, then the next case in the Mishnah should also deal with prohibited water. But Katani Seifa might be I am benosin tam. We say water in wine as if it gives off flavor when the wine gives off flavor. And so it must be that the water is permitted. So the whole Mishnah is something permitted falling into something prohibited. The first cause is where wine that was The first case is where wine that was permitted falls into water that was prohibited. And Seifa the Kanafa Maya de Tero Chamar de Isura. And the concluding case is where water that was permitted falls into wine that was prohibited. But in both cases, it's where the permitted item is falling to the prohibited item. Kiyasa Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So usually after Rav Dimi is Ravin, or it's Ravin and Rav Dimi together, but in this case it's Rav Yitzchak came in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and he says Ama'ara Yayin Nesach. If you pour Yayin Nesach from a small pitcher into a pit, even the whole day long, Rishon Bato, it's going to be nullified. The Davka, it only makes sense to say this Tzartzor Katan to a Nafish Amudei, specifically a small jug, which the spout is not large of a chavis, but if it's a barrel, the Nafish Amudei, where it's very large, well, we're not going to say it. So now, after Avdimi came along, after Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef comes Ravin. In the first case, it was Rav Dimi. Now we have Ravin coming along. He says, "Yayin nesach shenafal labor, v'nafal sham kiton shamayim." If yayin nesach fell into a pit, and also there was a jug of water there as well. So you have yayin and water, and the water is permitted. So you have wine that's prohibited that falls in, and water that's permitted that falls in. So Rowan it's a heter kilo eno. We view the permitted wine as though it's not there. The shar and the remaining part, mayim rabin olavim levatana. So we have the right to look at the mibamino and take away the permitted wine, and then just look at the water, and the water will nullify it. Ki asa Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda Amar Rabbi Yochanan. He said another version, a fourth version of Rabbi Yochanan. He says, "Lo shana al shenafal kiton shamayim tchila." This is only where the flask of water falls in first. But if the water did not fall in first, matzah minas mino v'neyor. We're going to say the wine, the min b'mino, will waken it up, and it will not be nullified. Some taught this about our Mishnah. Yayin b'yayin b'kol shehu. Our Mishnah says wine in any amount of wine is any amount. Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda Amar Rabbi Yochanan Loshana also nafal sham kiton shamayim. That's only where there's no flask of water. Aval nafal sham kiton shamayim. If there's a flask of water, Rowan is a heter ki'u eno. You have to look at the heter as though it's not there. The shar mayim rabin olavim levatana. So the rest of the water will overwhelm it and nullify it. What's the distinction? It doesn't need the water to nullify it first. He required it to be nullified first. Gemara cites machoket. Let's say you have the wine that fell into a pit, and water fell in as well. Amar Chizkiah. So Chizkiah says, if the wine and the water increased through the addition of the prohibited wine, means say if the prohibited wine came in last, it's forbidden. But if the water is what increased it, mutter, it's permitted. Rabbi Yochanan says, I feel mutter. Even if the wine is what increased it, it's going to be prohibited. These are very obviously complicated questions, which are very relevant to your idea. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Zera, and this is what we're talking about. This is the dispute between Rabbi Elazar and the Rabbanan. It's now we learned in the Mishnah. Let's say you have a seor of chulin and truma. Let's say you have the sourdough of chulin and truma that fell into the dough. So the sourdough of chulin and truma that fell into so basically the yeast that fell into the dough, neither one has enough to be to ferment. Then it's starful. So when they both combine, I follow the last one. Means say if the chulin fell in last, that's the one that made it basically ferment. So that's when I follow. This is the case that we had before. Two items are causing it together, so therefore it's not enough to cause it to ferment. It's not going to be liable. So that's the chamim. But Tizbara, can you really say this is the same argument? Amar Abaye, well, Shanal Shakadim Seal Kesa Easter. Where does Rabbi Elazar allow it? Only when they remove the Easter. Well, call them Seal Kesa Easter also, but if they didn't, it's going to be prohibited. So the Gemara says, Chizkiah de Amar Keman. Chizkiah says it like whom? Chizkiah says it. So it must be that Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan are arguing with whether we view it as though it's not there. He doesn't accept that concept. Where Rabbi Yochanan is, Rabbi Yochanan does. Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan Ron. Does Rabbi Yochanan really say this? Rabbi Yochanan. He once had the following question: Shnei kosos, echad shachol and echad truma. You have two cups. One is full and one's truma. Mizagan the ervin zebazeh, and you mix them together and you pour them one into the other. What's the law? Ma'u, below pasha. Rabbi Yochanan didn't understand it, and according to this, he should have answered it. He didn't. So it must be he wasn't sure about Rowan. So the Gemara says, "Meikaro pasha lebeso pasha." Yeah, this is in the end he understood it. Imar nami, Amar Rabbi Yami, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yasi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Shnei kosos. If you have two cups, echad shachol and echad shel truma, one is chol, one is truma. Umazag, and you mix them together. The ervim zebazeh, and then he mixed them together. Rowan is a heter kilo eno v'ashar mayim rabin alevus umbatluso. If you have shishim against the Easter, it works, and the rest can nullify it. And the Gemara says, our Mishnah said this is the general rule. If it's two similar substances, it's any amount. If it's not the same substance, it has to give off taste. So both of them said, Kol Isur and Shebet Torah, b'minan b'mashu. If they mix with every prohibition in the Torah, it's any amount. Shelo b'mino, if it's the same substance. So if it's a different substance, but no same time. It has to give flavor. Asuye mai. Asuye Kol Isur and Shebet Torah includes all of the prohibitions of the Torah. Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish Amar Kol Isurim Shebet Torah bein b'minan bein shelo b'minan b'no same time. All the prohibitions of the Torah, whether or not they're the same or whether they're different substances, it's if it gives off taste. Chutz mi tevel v'yayin nesach, exception of tevel, which is untied produce, and yayin nesach. Tevel and yayin nesach b'minan b'mashu, if the same substance is any amount. The shelo b'mino, if it's two different substances but no same time, it's if it gives off flavor. Zekal, this is the general rule. Asuye tevel comes to include tevel. Tanya Kavasi to Rabbi Shmuel, Tanya Kavasi to Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. The price like Rabbi Shmuel, it's the price like Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Tanya Kavasi to Rabbi Shmuel, what's the price like? Kol Isur and Shebet Torah, b'mina b'mashu, shelo b'mina b'mosi tam. All the prohibitions of the Torah, if it is Kol Isur and Shebet Torah, if there's the same substance, any amount, shelo b'mina b'mosi tam. So that's what we just said. And Tanya Kavasi to Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, Kol Isur and Shebet Torah, b'mina shelo b'mina b'mosi tam. They're like Reish Lakish, exception of Tevel v'yayin nesach, which is b'mina b'mashu, shelo b'mina b'nosin tam. Okay, so all of this, we did it so quickly, I'm sorry, but God willing, we'll go slowly on Shabbos. I just wanted to say it, and this is a daf for Shabbos, but on Shabbos Kodesh, we'll go much slower and go more carefully as we march through this tractate, getting ready for the Siyum next week, God willing. Baruch Hashem.